All right, let's dive in. Today, we're stepping into a world where your entire family's history is written down 100 years before it happens, where ghosts hang around the dinner table, and where a family is doomed to repeat its own mistakes over and over again. We are talking about the absolute masterwork of magical realism, Gabriel García Márquez's 100 Years of Solitude. So this is one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature. And right away, it completely messes with your sense of time. The past, the present, the future, they aren't a straight line in this book. Nope, it's more like a circle, this tangled loop where a memory from the past and a prophecy of the future are pretty much the same thing. It just brilliantly sets the stage for a story that you realize is already over before it's even begun. So who was the mind behind this incredible world? That would be the Nobel Prize-winning author Gabriel García Márquez. He was an absolute master of a style called magical realism. Now, what does that mean? Well, the idea is kind of simple, but it's revolutionary. You take these extraordinary, magical events and you talk about them like they're no big deal. But then you take everyday, mundane life and you treat it as something wondrous and mysterious. It's a world where the impossible is, just another Tuesday.
Okay, so at the very heart of this huge, sprawling epic is one single driving mystery. It's this idea that the entire fate of a family, stretching over 7 generations, was all written down ahead of time, locked away on some cryptic parchments.
This whole story was foretold by a wandering gypsy named Melchiades. The book calls him a prodigious creature and a fugitive from all the plagues. I mean, what a description. He's this larger-than-life character who shows up with all these strange inventions and an even stranger destiny for the town. He writes down the family's entire fate in Sanskrit, of all things, and for 100 years it just sits there, in a locked room, waiting for someone to finally figure it all out.
But look, before that prophecy can be unraveled, we gotta go all the way back to the beginning, back to the founding of the mythical town that's at the very center of this story, Macondo.
Macondo gets its start with the family patriarch José Arcadio Buendía. He's fleeing his hometown, and after journeying through the jungle for 2 long years, he has this wild dream on a riverbank. He dreams of a, quote, noisy city with houses having mirror walls. And that's it. He just stops his journey right then and there and decides he's going to build Macondo from the mud up.
And this quote, wow, it just perfectly shows you how mythical and totally isolated Macondo is in the beginning. It's like a brand new Garden of Eden, a place completely cut off from the rest of the world, where the Buendía family can kick off their strange, solitary story all on their own terms.
So let's meet the family at the center of this hurricane of fate, the Buendías, a sprawling, complicated, and let's be honest, deeply flawed dynasty.
So take a look at this family tree. The very first thing you're going to notice is the names. They repeat over and over and over again. You've got your Aurelianos and your José Arcadios generation after generation. And trust me, that's no accident. García Márquez does this to show us how this family is just trapped in a cycle, with every new generation inheriting the exact same fatal flaws as the last one.
The Aurelianos, for instance, they tend to be these quiet, withdrawn, analytical types. They have this kind of sixth sense, an insight into things that just ends up isolating them from everyone else. The most famous one, of course, is Colonel Aureliano Buendía, who starts out as a quiet metalsmith and somehow ends up starting 32 civil wars and, yeah, he loses every single one.
And then you've got the José Arcadios. They're the complete opposite. They're huge, impulsive, incredibly strong men who are just driven by their appetites and their sheer force of will. But all that strength, it almost always leads them to some kind of tragic, violent end. You see, each name carries its own destiny, its own version of the family curse.
But what is this curse really? Well, it's the word right there in the title, solitude. But for the Buendías, this is not just about being lonely. No, it's way deeper. It's like a spiritual inability to truly love. They just can't see or connect with the people around them. And here's the most important part. That solitude is why the cycle repeats. Because they're trapped inside themselves, they can never learn from the past, which dooms them to live it all over again. They're a family that's never really a family.
Colonel Aureliano Buendía figures this out, but way too late in life. After all his wars, all his fame, he finally understands that his destiny was never to connect with people, but just to make peace with his own isolation. And that is the tragic heart of this entire novel. So for decades, Macondo exists in this sort of mythical, isolated bubble. But then, the outside world, disguised as progress, comes crashing in. And it is not a gentle arrival. A single invention completely shatters Macondo's isolation forever: the train. It's brought to town by one of the Aurelianos, and it connects them to the outside world, unleashing this wave of so-called progress that will ultimately turn out to be a plague. The train brings a foreign banana company, and with it, what the book literally calls a banana plague. Thousands of outsiders flood the town. New technologies like electric lights and movie theaters pop up overnight. Macondo is transformed into this chaotic, unrecognizable boomtown, and that old, magical world, well, it just starts to wither away and die.
This violent kind of progress hits its peak when the army massacres thousands of striking banana workers. But here's the really chilling part. The government denies it ever happened. They completely erase it from the official record, claiming it was all a fantasy. The massacre only exists in the memory of one person, José Arcadio Segundo, the only survivor.
After that massacre, Macondo just begins to rot. It rains for 4 years, 11 months, and 2 days straight, basically washing the town into ruin. And as the physical world crumbles, we finally get back to those parchments, back to the prophecy that started this whole mess.
But even in all that decay, the magic is still there. And this might be the most famous image of magical realism ever written. Remedios the Beauty, a woman so beautiful she literally drives men to their death, is outside helping to hang laundry when she just ascends. She floats up into the sky, wrapped in white bed sheets, and disappears. And her family? They're just kind of bummed that they lost their good sheets.
Years go by. The house is falling apart, infested with red ants. Only one Buendía is left, Aureliano Babilonia. He has spent his entire life locked away in Melquiades's old room, obsessed with just one thing, figuring out what those parchments say and discovering his family's true destiny.
And then he gets it. The final, absolutely mind-shattering revelation. He realizes the parchments aren't just a prophecy about the past. No, they are a real-time narration of his family's 100-year history, and the final pages are describing what he is doing at that very second. He is reading about himself reading the parchments.
And as he deciphers the very last line of the prophecy fulfills itself. A biblical hurricane, this apocalyptic wind, just descends on Macondo and completely wipes the entire town, the entire family, the entire history right off the face of the earth. The city of mirrors is gone in a flash.
And that is the devastating final sentence of the book. The cycle is complete, the prophecy is fulfilled, the family's fate was always sealed, written down before they were even born. There was never any escape, and there are no second chances.
It really leaves you with this profound question about fate versus free will, doesn't it? The Buendías, they lived their lives driven by their passions and what they thought were their own choices, all while just unknowingly following a pre-written script. So it makes you ask yourself, if you had the chance to read the book of your own life, would you really dare to open it?